This is a story about a person who was working in the Antarctica research base as a guide who risked not only his life but also his colleagues' lives to safely bring his dogs back home. In this story we also see how 8 dogs survived for months in extreme weather conditions of Antarctica. In the beginning of the movie we see the main character, Jerry, and his friend Charlie. Jerry Shepherd works as a guide in the Antarctica base of National Science Foundation, whereas Charlie is a mechanical engineer whose job is to prepare road maps. Charlie and Jerry, both, play a game where they have to stay outside in the cold without clothes. Both were enjoying the game to the fullest. Now we see 8 dogs who were peacefully sleeping outside the base. Jerry approaches the dogs and tries to wake them up. To keep the dogs active, Jerry makes them to exercise while feeding them. Then a plane arrives at the base. The name of the pilot of the plane is Katie. Katie is accompanied by Dr. Davis McLaren, who is a professor in UCLA. Actually, Dr. Davis has to go to Mount Melbourne to find a meteor stone that fell from planet Mercury. Everyone soon freshens up. Katie, Charlie and Jerry were playing cards. Katie asks Charlie about his girlfriend. Charlie shows his girlfriend's photo to Katie and says that she is absolutely fine. During the small talks, Jerry asks Dr. Davis where is he heading to from the base. Jerry is left surprised when Dr. Davis says that he is about to visit Mount Melbourne. Jerry asks everyone that why he was not informed about it before. Jerry, pointing to the map, shows Mount Melbourne and says that to visit Mount Melbourne at this time would be very dangerous. Jerry's boss, Dr. Andy, tells Jerry that it is now Jerry's responsibility to take Dr. Davis to Mount Melbourne. Jerry then replies that Mount Melbourne is so high that no vehicle would be able to take them there. Jerry says that only with the help of dog sleds one can reach Mount Melbourne. Jerry initially wasn't ready to go but was soon convinced by his boss, Dr. Andy. Jerry prepares himself and his dogs for the journey to Mount Melbourne. Jerry tells his beloved dogs that this would be their last expedition and after that they would travel back home with Jerry. In the evening, Jerry brings ice cream for Katie and they both starts to have a conversation. Charles, on the other hand, prepares his bed and spreads it on the floor to sleep. After having a little fun, both Jerry and Charles heads back to sleep. In the morning, both Dr. Davis and Jerry gets ready to head to Mount Melbourne. Jerry introduces Dr. Davis to his 8 dogs. The names of Jerry's 8 dogs are Maya, Old Jack, Shorty, Truman, Shadow, Buck and Max. Jack was the oldest and Max was the youngest among all the dogs. Maya is the leader of the pack. Jerry tells Dr. Davis that only these dogs can take them to their destination. Charlie clicks a picture of Jerry, his dogs and Dr. Davis. They now starts their journey to Mount Melbourne. Jerry's dogs were running in full speed and moving forward. Jerry made Dr. Davis sit on the sled while he was guiding the pack. They were crossing high mountains and glaciers in full speed. While moving forward, on his way, Jerry sees a huge ground filled with snow. Jerry could sense danger in the ground. Jerry orders the dogs to stop the sled and makes them stand in a line. Jerry then checks the icy ground to make sure if it is safe enough to move forward. Jerry and Dr. Davis could spot leopard seals under the ground. Jerry tells Dr. Davis that these leopard seals are very dangerous and are experts hunters. Jerry along with his dogs moved to a new ground that was covered with glaciers. They had to be very careful this time while crossing the ground because crossing icy grounds was very risky. Jerry asks Dr. Davis to drive the sled while he walks in order to keep an eye on the ground while they move forward. Dr. Davis agrees to it and decides to ride the sled. Suddenly Max pulls the sled to a different direction, resulting in off balance of the sled. Dr. Davis along with the sled falls into a deep crack and gets stuck. Jerry, looking into the seriousness of the matter, comes with a solution. Jerry asks Dr. Davis to have a tight grip on the sled. Jerry made the dogs run towards a different direction so that the sled could pick up speed and Dr. Davis could successfully come out of the crack. The dogs saved Dr. Davis's life. Jerry decides to set the camp nearby as the dogs were tired and exhausted. Later, at the camp, Dr. Davis shows gratitude to Jerry for saving his life. While Jerry and Dr. Davis are out on the expedition, here in the Antarctica base they get an emergency message from the weather department. They have been informed to quickly evacuate the base as there is a huge storm heading their way. Katie sends the message to Jerry and requests them to immediately leave for the base as the storm could cause serious destruction. Dr. Davis was hesitant to leave the place without the meteor stone. Dr. Davis tells Jerry that he has worked really hard to reach this place and that is why he would not leave the place without finding the meteor. Dr. Davis begs Jerry to allow him for more time to find the meteor stone. Jerry was reluctant at first but then agrees to extend the timing and gives him half a day to find the fragment meteor. Luckily Dr. Davis could find the meteor in Mount Melbourne. They get ready to return to the base. In the base, they get another emergency call from the weather department where they were instructed to immediately evacuate the place as the intensity of the storm has increased. One of Jerry's dog gets hurt in his leg. While Jerry was applying bandage to the dog, he asked Dr. Davis to give a call and inform the base that they are on their way. Dr. Davis got distracted and slipped down an embankment. Dr. Davis broke his leg and fell into freezing water. Dr. Davis was drowning, but Jerry, with the help of the lead dog Maya, pulls Dr. Davis out with a rope. Dr. Davis was not able to move as his leg was broken and he suffered hypothermia. The storm started advancing with a surge. Everyone at the base were desperately waiting for Jerry and his team. They were deeply concerned. Jerry lifts Dr. Davis and makes him sit on the sled while he tries to drive. The cold had risen because of the storm. Jerry was not able to move his hand. He falls sick. Jerry's dogs in the meantime shows their caliber. The 8 dogs pull the sled with full speed and leads them to the base safely. Katie starts the engine of the plane to evacuate the base. Everyone gets on the plane one by one. But Jerry was worried about his dogs. Jerry asks his boss Dr. Andy how they would evacuate his dogs from the base. Dr. Andy replies that as soon as the storm subsides, some pilots would return and carry the dogs back with them. Jerry was not ready to leave his dogs behind, but he was left with no option as the plane had no capacity to carry the dogs. Jerry tightens the dogs' collars to ensure they cannot get loose. Jerry on his way gets very emotional. The dogs barked as they saw the plane leaving. Jerry fainted in the plane. Jerry was immediately admitted to the hospital. Charlie was by Jerry's side when he gained back his consciousness. Soon after Jerry gained back his sense, he asked Charlie if his dogs were being rescued. Charlie informed Jerry that due to the harsh weather conditions nobody could rescue the dogs. Jerry visits Katie and requests her to bring his dogs back, but she refused to help as the weather condition was not favorable. Jerry then visits the army commander to seek help, but he was informed that all the planes had been cancelled. Jerry was very disappointed. Jerry starts to blame himself for everything. In the base, the dogs were chained and were waiting for Jerry to return. Jerry leaves no stone unturned and visits each and every place in Washington seeking help. The dogs begin to break free one by one. Only the oldest dog, named Old Jack, failed to break free and remained attached. Jerry visits Dr. Davis and requests him to provide some help to rescue the dogs. Jerry reminds Dr. Davis how the dogs saved his life and now it is his turn to return the favor by rescuing the dogs. But unfortunately, Dr. Davis failed to help Jerry. Here in base, all the dogs were starving. A gull flies nearby and the dogs wanted to hunt it and eat. Later, a flock of gull appears, seeing which Max starts barking. All the dogs start chasing the flock of gull. Maya, the lead dog, was still standing by Old Jack's side. Old Jack was too weak and refused to get up. Maya tries to wake Old Jack, but he gave up and died. Maya was disheartened and left Old Jack to join the pack. Since the dogs were starving for weeks, they desperately wanted to hunt the gulls and eat them. After many failed attempts, Maya comes with a plan to catch the gulls. Maya chases the gulls while 3 other dogs would stand in front of the gulls. The remaining 3 dogs were standing by the sides. While Maya chases the gulls from behind, the other dogs attack them from all the corners. In this way, the dogs could successfully hunt the gulls, and after weeks they had their first meal. It's been more than 2 months now and the dogs are on their own. Although the 7 dogs have become very weak, but they haven't lost hope and kept traveling. One night the dogs were resting on a slope under southern lights. The dogs were fascinated by the display, starts to run about and play. Dewey slips and falls down an incline. Dewey dies the following morning. Max loyally stays by Dewey's side. The other dogs kept waiting for Max, but after a while they moved on. By the time Max heads in their direction, he had lost traces of the pack. Here Jerry visits his teacher and mentor who trained him. Jerry's teacher tells him that these dogs have always been loyal to Jerry and they have been by his side no matter what, so now when the dogs need him, Jerry should go and save them. Maya and her pack kept traveling and finally reached a Russian base which was unsecured and full of food. There was no one at the base and the doors were unlocked. The dogs fed themselves with biscuits, bread and cake. Max, on the other hand, kept looking for his team and reached the old American base which was already locked. Here Davis organizes a huge party because he could successfully find the meteor. Jerry arrives at the party and tells Davis that he is going to rescue his dogs no matter if he have to walk barefoot to get to the destination. Jerry soon leaves the party after the conversation with Dr. Davis. Dr. Davis was amazed to see Jerry's fondness for the dogs. 152 days have gone by and the dogs are still on their own in the freezing cold of Antarctica. Max, who got separated from the pack, finds a dead orca. Max was hungry and wanted to feed on the orca. But Max was unaware that a deadly leopard seal was nesting inside the dead orca's body. As soon as Max approached to feed on the dead orca, the leopard seal drives him off. Seeing the leopard seal in front of him, Max starts to continuously bark. Maya and her team hears Max and joins him. Max wanted his other team members to also eat the dead orca. Therefore Max makes a second attempt to go near the dead orca and lure the leopard seal away. Max takes a piece of meat in his mouth and runs away. Leopard seal gets furious and chases Max. In the meantime, the other dogs feed on the dead orca. The leopard seal soon returns to the dead orca and attacks Maya and bites her leg. In the rage, the other dogs jump on the seal and starts to tear her apart. The frightened seal drags itself into the water and moves away. Maya along with the other dogs continue to travel in the freezing cold. Injured Maya was soon exhausted and eventually collapsed on the snow. The other dogs get disheartened seeing their leader's condition. They lie down beside Maya as the snow starts piling up. It's been 6 months since the dogs have been on their own. Jerry travels to New Zealand and arranges a meeting with a local sailor in a pub. There in the pub, Jerry requests the sailor to take him to the Antarctica, but the sailor refused to do so. Katie was also in the pub. She was watching Jerry talk to the sailor. Jerry was elated to find Katie in the pub. Charlie and Dr. Davis was also present in the pub. They wanted to surprise Jerry. Actually, Dr. Davis understood the gravity of the matter and decided to use the remaining fund to rescue Jerry's dogs. With the help of a helicopter, the crew headed to the Antarctica. Katie lands the helicopter in a big ship. They are now supposed to continue their journey in the ship. But unfortunately, the ship gets stuck in the snow and fails to move forward. Then Charlie comes up with a new plan. According to his plan, they would cover half of the distance in the helicopter and the rest they would cover by road. The members agree to Charlie's plan. Here, all the dogs bring food for Maya, but she refuses to eat. Maya has become very weak. Seeing their team leader in pain, the other dogs also refuse to eat. Charlie, Jerry, Katie and Dr. Davis finally arrives at the Antarctica base. As soon as they arrive at the base, they start looking for the dogs. They were dismayed to find the body of old Jack, still attached to the chain. Jerry soon finds out that the other dogs could escape. Then they hear barking and see Max, Shorty, Truman, Shadow and Buck come over the horizon. Jerry and his team were overjoyed to see the dogs. The dogs were equally excited to see Jerry and his crew. After a joyous reunion, Jerry loads the dogs to leave. Max refused to get in the car. Max barked at Jerry and soon runs off. Jerry follows Max and finds Maya lying in the snow. Jerry was in tears when he saw Maya. Jerry thought he lost Maya. But soon Jerry realized that Maya was alive. Maya slowly opened her eyes, lifted her head and looked at Jerry. Jerry couldn't believe his eyes. He then picked up Maya and took her to the car. With 6 of his 8 sled dogs, Jerry and his crew headed back to the city. In the last scene, the graves of the 2 fallen dogs, old Jack and Dewey, could be seen. Thus, the movie ends. Please comment, like, share and subscribe for more movies.